Welcome to the Ethics Guild podcast. We have a very exciting episode today. We have our co-founders, Kevin and Autumn, and our chemists in the house, David Andrade, and myself, Wendell. We're going to talk about birth control, the chemical and psychological effects on women, and also we're going to talk about Plan B. So we're going to first start with the birth pills. And I want to do something a little unusual. I want to. We have Autumn, which she's a women leader and so courageous. I would like to hear what would be her first question. What is your curiosity about this topic, Autumn?
Oh my goodness, I have so many things that come to mind. But I guess it hits home because as a woman, obviously, for many years I've struggled with a lot of like period issues, and I never was given an answer for why I always had such painful periods, to be honest with you. Um, and I even had made a trip to the hospital where I had a doctor look me in the eyes and say, "Well, if I had a cure for what you have, I would be a millionaire." And he's like, "I can't help you." And I just have always had a dead end in trying to figure out what was going on. But the only solution that everybody gave to me was birth control. Oh, you have cramps? Take some birth control. You're having heavy bleeding? Take birth control. You're bleeding for 9 days? Take birth control. And every time I would ask questions, it would just lead me into like a never-ending loop. And I honestly get frustrated because I have these symptoms, and I had to do a deep dive into like connecting my own dots, which we'll get into. But sitting on the sidelines with somebody who actually like would love to learn about women's health and have solutions given, to sit back and watch people honestly rally at parades and parade around abortion and birth control as women's health care, when you have people who struggle with PCOS, endometriosis, all of these things that are actual women's health issues not be addressed. But the more promotion of abortion and birth control, it honestly like gets my goat. So that's why I have an interest in this topic. And I guess we can discuss, what is women's health? Like, why is it important? Why is it important to educate our young women on the beauty of their bodies? Why are women's bodies condemned today, right? What are the stereotypes of a woman's body, and why is it seen as controversial to talk about these topics, but it's not controversial to talk about a woman's right to birth control? That only masks the problem. It doesn't help. So I don't know the mouthful, but
Yeah, I definitely agree to that because also we don't talk about the long effects. And it's sad to see that the only solution they give is just take birth control pills. And we don't think about like in depth, like what are going to be the long term effect of taking birth control pills.
yeah.
And I wanted to start this with David. Um, I wanted to ask David, like, how can we start? How do you want to start chemically this women health journey with women with birth control and the chemical effects?
First, we must know that women, we are talking about women X or any type of women, not those who consider themselves women, but those who are women and who have the female reproductive organ. We're not the same. Everyone has their particularities, as Oron said. In the part that they have a condition, endometriosis, others do not suffer from them, and we treat them all the same, and that there are therapies in charge of solving the female disease, in this case through hormonal control, or they saw the part of to get pregnant, and that one will getting pregnant reduce these complications. You have to see that this is a cycle. That is why it is a menstrual cycle, and the same problem will happen every month. Or we are going to have this possibility that this woman can get pregnant while men can't. We can control it, and we are not going to get pregnant, but we are going to be the cause of that pregnancy. Let's put it this way. And it is we who should control overpopulation and not women from the point of view as men, because it is not the same. Female could get girl pregnant, put it that way. If we are one, we are people, we are with couple, we can generate many pregnancies, while a woman cannot generate one, and that lasts approximately 9 months. I believe that the control of such as the birth rate part, let's put it that way, should be oriented in another direction as a personal opinion. The only way we have to prevent pregnancy is through the use of a condom, or the, I don't know what they call it, the vasectomy condom or the vasectomy, which is clearly the control of that, control the one that is pregnancy, a control so as not to let get pregnant. Many men don't like the word vasectomy or the condom method. I think that we are in charge of controlling that part, but we are already far from that. And that is why there are contraceptive methods, which are many towards the female part, from devices, intradermal or pill inflate. So I think that today we are talk about two pills in particular, which I think are the least harmful, and one is misused.
Yes. Guys, from what David was saying, what is your point of view?
Yeah. So, the contraceptive methods of like vasectomies and for the guys, and then the pills and plan B for the women's. Like one of them is such like a long term. Like once you snip it, it's like you can't reattach the tube. Um, and that one's like done for the creative portion of that, because it's that it is that creative cell that's in your body, creates life. um and then for the lady side, one is just kind of like a band-aid for the moment. I think with the pills that are the methods that are involved are kind of more on methods of, they're like band-aid methods. They're attachment methods. Like sex is it's valid. It does create life, and that's the hard part. And like it's not that it's the hard part, but it does create life, and you can't take that away from it. And we're patching it up with these contraceptive methods. And God gave us this for a reason, like as gifts to be like fruitful and all, So it's such a hard topic, because at the same time that right, but like America's going through a baby boom right now, like China's trying to go through a baby boom right now too. It's just these are effects of the contraceptive methods.
Mm.
Yeah. But there hasn't been a really good biological responsibility for men. And what happened is this responsibility was passed to women. And we also got to look at the behavior, right? And I'm gonna tell you what life looked like for women, the before and after the birth pill. So what happened when the birth pill came? Before the birth pill didn't exist, women were subjected to be home. They were always getting pregnant. They couldn't really go into schools because they were considered a liability to not finish, or a liability that if you work, you could get pregnant and then you weren't going to be there. And you remember there were no pregnancy laws back then. There was none of these things were designed. So there's a before and after the birth pill. So after the birth pill, you started to see that, and it's unfortunate that they didn't start seeing women as a liability at work. That is the psychological effect it starts having. And then you start seeing women, really committing to a long-term career. And then, now you see women getting pregnant at an age of 30 years old once they complete their career. So it has been a transformation on that aspect, but every good thing has its bad. we can't, say that this hasn't been giving women, I guess, I would say like an opportunity, an equal opportunity with of men. But what I do believe men should have, like David was saying, like you were saying, we need to have a biological responsibility. If we were more responsible with the seeds that we can plant, we would have never had these issues to start with. But also, what are we biologically designed for? So we have to even go before we even think of the psychology, we need to think about the biology and the chemistry, how these things take into effect. And then after we understand that, I think we can go into really what these pills do to your brain and how do they chemically react in your body. Because they do have some really, I would say they have some really bad effects, especially in women that are in their adolescence. It produces, it changes their life in many ways. So, Autumn, I don't know. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts?
I think if we're going to talk about birth control, we need to talk about the founder of birth control. And I like that you're saying like there's a before birth control and there's an after, because that's for sure. So Margaret Sanger was a woman who she was very, let's just say, like she was supported and highly regarded by Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime. She was a eugenicist, right? And so she concocted the idea of birth control because she basically said Jews, Blacks, and Hispanics should not be reproducing. And she basically said, like, she condemned abortion for the like cleanest of the white race, right? The Caucasian race. If the baby had high IQ and was deemed like personally, like his blood was clean and perfect, then he could survive. But people with handicaps, mental handicaps, and just of a different race, she said, like, basically didn't have, and I'm paraphrasing here, but didn't have the like right to live. And so, if you look around where Planned Parenthoods are, which claim to give women's a lot of health care. What is the health care? It's birth control. They're always in the poorest neighborhoods. They're always in predominantly Black and Hispanic neighborhoods. And they're the women who they have hooked on birth control. And, she wrote a lot about, like, I forgot how she phrased it, but like the poor people like shouldn't be reproducing. And she wrote about the Black people in the South and how I think she said like they were breeding like irresponsibly. And so she was just a very horrible woman. And she spoke of the demise of the family. She spoke about, being able to sleep around freely and have no consequence. And she kind of put that notion of like you guys are saying, that men don't have the responsibility of a woman. And, my views are very, I have a very controversial views, but men and women are predominantly different, right? We both bring life into the world, but women bring babies into the world. They bring life into the world, and men give the seed that gives life to the world. And so I think like when she introduced the foundations of birth control, which contraception and abortion go hand in hand, the more she introduced that into the world, which the Nazi regime and the doctors, Joseph Mengele, they were using her methods and praising her for it. And that's not talked about right now, right? But when you have the Planned Parenthood galas where they're giving out the Margaret Sanger Awards, you have to look at these people that they are awarding, Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi. And like, this is what these people stand for, but they'll have people like under the guise of, this is for healthcare and we care about you. But in reality, they want to see the demise of the family, and they don't want the truth out there, right? And there really is not a lot of information about the woman's body. It is seen as like destructive, where a woman has to put work before her family. But there are women who genuinely love raising a family or wanting to be a mom. And I think our culture has become a culture of death, where a woman has been made to feel like she is inferior to a man. And we don't sit down and say, like, a man and a woman both are different but complementary to each other. They're harmonious, and we both have very important roles to play in society. Yeah,
Yeah.
That was a lot.
Yeah,
But yeah.
there's a what you're saying there, it's true. There's a psychological effect now that you see these hormonal changes in women. I'm not going to say that's everyone, but a large majority. Think about how being a stay-home mom is viewed today. Is it seen as somebody that is productive, somebody that's highly regarded? No, correct? We can agree to that.
Well, it
It's
depends
almost
what
it's
circle.
almost like society has belittled that when it's like I have kids and David has kids and it's the hardest job you can do. It's not easy. And it's very stressful. It's not an easy task. So I like it's been undermined, and I'm not saying that women have to stay. No, what I'm saying is we should never undermine taking care of a child, regardless of a man or a woman. It's hard work and it's every day consistent that you have to do this to raise that child in conjunction for the best future you can possibly give them. I'm sorry, Autumn, go ahead.
Oh no, you can keep talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, I fully agree with you guys for sure. Because I was just talking to my neighbor the other day and how he's raising his kid. He just has a newborn, and his routine is just like fully thrown off and stuff. And it is a lot of work. It comes with responsibility, and I think like the culture now throws away the responsibility of it. I mean, we have these contraceptive methods because of the responsibility of bringing life in through that method, and it's such a hard balance. So you have the fertility windows, right? Like the natural windows, and then we have these man-made sources, the chemical sources, which is like Plan B um and the other birth control pills. I guess one of my questions to David is what's the effects of like the long-term effects of, let's say, using Plan B over and over, or like the chemical differences of Plan B and the birth control pill? Like, what's the chemical differences, and how does it impact the body?
Well, first, I'm contributing a little to the point we've seen. I believe that responsibility is mutual and should be mutual. Man, woman, in the part of raising children and in the part of deciding how many children one he wants to have with his partner or how many children you want to bring into the world. If you can have 10 couples, get married, now you divorce if you want to have more children. I think this is a responsibility, and now the male part takes it more seriously, or we take it more seriously now because there is a greater responsibility in terms of the two methods we saw. One is considered emergency because it is a single pill, but it is being used in an inappropriate way because it is. If you take one of these pills, which means that you had a relationship without any type of protection, now and that generates a different problem, which is that you do not prevent the transmission of a disease. And the first point, the second, that this emergency only serves you for the moment, for that moment, that encounter. Because if there the next day and you have a meeting with the same person or with another, this one is no longer useful to you because the effect lasts 15 hours. So if it's past 3 p.m., you have another encounter without protection, you can get pregnant. And again, if this person takes this emergency and that is no longer another emergency. And again, you load your body, your organ with a high amount of hormones that in the end can be complicated in a later life. So you have to know how to differentiate what an emergency is, because if you have already taken one, you are not going to take another after 20 hours. Let's put it this way, because or K for a C, and that's why you took it. Well, After 15 hours, you could have used any other method of contraception. So not doing good treatment can generate hormonal problems. This woman may have alterations in her menstrual cycle, headaches, nausea, vomiting, dizziness. We don't know if there will be any problems later within her uterus, or her ovaries themselves. So why are we using a high amount of hormone, and if they are very repetitive? She is already a person who really does not take care of her sexuality, and it is irresponsible, because against herself it is irresponsible for using the emergency pill when that, and second, because by not protecting herself she may fall ill with some transmissible disease. So you're not being irresponsible to her in any way. That's what I can limit for the moment, and as I tell you, this is more of a matter of mutual responsibility. I believe that we already have much greater knowledge, and we are all already much more responsible for what we want and need for our bodies. I think we have already seen some programs. We have seen that it is best to maintain ourselves as much as possible, our own responsibility for our health, and that we need to improve quality of life and exercise, eat healthier, and take care of ourselves in this reproductive part too.
Yeah, and just to talk about the ovarian hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Think about like when you take a Plan B, it's paused. You inhibit it, and you create a new cycle. Think about like if again, unfortunately, there's not enough studies that tells us, and I can't quote, but I can speculate. This isn't a hypothesis, not a theory or a practice, but the constant interruption of any hormone has effects. So, like David is saying, if this person continues to take Plan B and their hormonal cycle changes, their menstrual cycle changes abruptly, because that's exactly what this does. It cuts it abruptly. So it tells the brain to literally, to the hypothalamus to not produce any estrogen. So it doesn't, the I'm sorry, follicles don't connect with ovaries are not stimulated. That's exactly what happens. So again and again, if you do that, I'm pretty sure in the near future we will find some studies that will give us what are the real consequences of people that have taken this, like it's a anti-conceptive, I'm sorry, pill.
Yeah.
Sí, especially because, let's see, it depends on the time of the cycle where this pill is taken. Is the release of the folio delayed? Yes. In another, however, the structure of the endometrium, that of the uterus, changes. So other than that, you're crazy in the hypothalamus part, and he doesn't know what to do anymore. There's a complete imbalance because you drive your whole body. Exactly. Especially the confusion at the level of the brain, because it says, hey, I have to produce, I don't have to produce. So that is going to generate different types of problems, not only in the reproductive part, but also in the part of our hypothalamus, which does not know whether to secrete hormone or not. When do I return it again? How can I put it? Is it like restarting the computer many times in a week? Let's put it that way. Then at some point it's going to go crazy. Let's say this in order to be able to describe the constant action of hormones, or a high introduction of hormones at the oral level.
And this is important when he's saying, because the ovary and the hypothalamus connect, they communicate, like, and this is why one of the things I was telling you guys, we need to understand what is a woman biologically to understand why these chemical reactions happen, right? So the ovaries are telling the brain, it's like, we need to create an egg for reproduction, right? We need to create the follicle. Why? Because we need to reproduce. And so what happens is when the estrogen, I'm sorry, is constantly cut off. What happened is, like, the hypothalamus is saying, okay, we're not going to stimulate the ovaries. So when the ovaries are not stimulated, then you start producing progesterone. So which is telling them, like, oh, the egg has been already, it's out there. It's out there waiting for the sperm to come out. So we need to understand when you cut that so often and abruptly, it does bring mood swings. It does bring a lot of psychological. There's a lot of cases of depression and anxiety because, like David is saying, your hypothalamus is confused because you're supposed to have this every month on the same day. And now imagine if that's changed abruptly every single time. There's a lot of cases where women that are in birth control for many years, they lose interest in sex and libido. They just their hypothalamus doesn't even know what to do because you're constantly stopping the effect of having a baby, right? Because that's the whole point of the ovaries communicating to the hypothalamus to stimulate the ovary. And it's funny that think about how important sex is, and we don't talk about that. The sex is almost seen as a taboo, but biologically, it's something the human race needs, and it stimulates you in a positive way. We were designed to do and act in sexual activities.
Yeah, it's one of our biological things. It's that God gave it to us, and it's one of those. It's sacred. It's sacred. It's very sacred in that sense, and that's why you feel such a great high from it too, right? And it's that sacred act, is connecting with it. But with that, it does come a lot of responsibility, man. That's why we're talking about it today, because we try to devalue the sacredness of the action with the contraceptive methods.
Yeah,
And
I agree with that. I think so. There are 4 seasons in nature, right? And a woman has 4 cycles. And so her body is naturally preparing and anticipating like fertilization of an egg. And then the body's preparing for a baby. And then, the body sees there's no baby. So then it releases the lining. And this is a cycle that continues to go on throughout the months. It's not just your menstruation cycle. You have your follicular, your luteal, your ovulatory, and your menstruation, and this is ongoing. And I think we need more education on women's bodies because a lot of young women don't know that there are 4 cycles. I think sex ed is promoted a lot, and what is in sex ed, it's not about what a male body function is to do, and it doesn't focus on what a woman's body is made to do. It's all about contraception and sex, and so I think our society is promoting a big disservice to our young children and our young adults because they're not stupid, and we're not animals just made to have sex and seek pleasure. I think with the promotion of contraception and birth control, there's been a dissolution of what it was made for. Sex is for reproducing, it's for reproduction, and it's also for relationships. So like you guys were just saying, yes, you have these intense chemical releases in your body that are made for bonding with that person, right, that you are having sex with. And the more that you do that with all these different people, the more you don't end up bonding with certain people, right? But I think birth control right now, they promote it like a tic tac, or just take it. There's no effects to it. You'll be fine. Even I'll circle back to Plan B, right? When President Biden, he actually was promoting a harsher abortion pill that he got on the news and said, "Oh, it's like taking a Tylenol and having your period," which was major misinformation for women who were taking these pills and then experiencing an abortion in their bathroom, and were very grieved with what was happening in their bodies. But especially with Plan B, like you guys are saying, there's such a chemical. It's very destructive to the body. Number one, and number two, they're both made to prevent a pregnancy, right? So Plan B is disturbing the cycle so that there will be no egg implantation. And even I was just researching that even birth control can be used as an abortifacient. So like it also has the power, if an egg is fertilized, to release the egg. And it's just mind-blowing to me, and it gets me so frustrated because the human body is not seen as sacred anymore. It's almost like, okay, like men have beautiful virtues where they are protectors, they're providers. I think men are very noble, but what society has done is kind of like torn them down to just kind of like to like extract from women, or to just extract and expect sex from women, right? And then for women, they've turned them into like, well, you're inferior to a man, so you have to like strive to be exactly like a man, and that's been seen through like sexual behaviors. And I just feel like there's such a disservice in our educational system, because birth control, plan B, it's destroying a woman's hormonal balance, right? Because then when you have women who are genuinely trying to conceive a child, they've done so much damage to their bodies that they don't even know was taking place, because this has been promoted by doctors and gynecologists. Then they find out how you lean into your fertility, what's beneficial for making a hospital environment for a baby. So there's just so much misinformation, and it's just a huge disservice, I think, to our society right now.
We also have to think about like the effects on the impact on sexual attraction. And why do I bring this into account? Because there's a behavior change. Think about this. Let's say birth control has taken that libido away from you, and you don't see men that attractive anymore, but you want to have a couple. Why are you having a couple for? Just think about that question. It's not about anymore about procreation. It's not about, even having sex or being attractive, but why would you have, if you're a woman, why would you have a man by your side?
Wait, can you just restate the question?
So, like, for example, the hormone effect on birth control pills has a psychological impact.
Mhm.
If it impacts the sexual attraction and the libido. So
Mhm.
women are affected with that birth control. So when they are selecting a partner, they're
Mhm.
not selecting them for that attraction. They're not selecting them for the attraction, the libido, the that they like them. Now they're going more into being, okay, can he provide security? And that's a common psychological, right? If you're not picking from that, you got to pick from something else.
Well, that's so interesting. That's so interesting.
Yes.
Like, I feel like when you combine sex in a relationship, right? Because of the bonding happening, right? There's your endorphins are kicking in. There's another chemical that kicks in, and I feel like it kind of like puts on these rose-colored glasses where you're kind of like you're not awake to the reality of the relationship. Like if there are red flags in your relationship, it's kind of like, oh, well, let's just have sex because that'll mask the problems, and then it's almost like a perpetual cycle, right? Like, so sex can mask, I think, in my opinion, can mask real problems in your relationship. Um, which, like, right, we're talking about a contraceptive. So women are having sex with their partners, with their boyfriends. Um, so I think they are prioritizing sex over. That's so funny you asked that question, because I think they're prioritizing sex over whether or not he can provide a stable household, or can he be a good father, or um, what happens if we experience like hardship together? How do we get through those problems together? I feel like pleasure is kind of ranked as number one in trying to find a spouse, and that's why the divorce rates are so high, because as soon as we fall out of that honeymoon phase, it's like, oh, you can't give to me what I need, like I'm out of here. So that was interesting. That made me think. I feel like we have an opposite take on that.
Oh, no, no. I agree, but what you're saying is that, but there's a psychological effect because of the pill, the birth control pill. It makes women not be too attractive to the male partner. It
Mm,
inhibits that. It takes away the sexual attraction, and because of these hormonal change. I'm not saying everyone, but there's been studies where when you take away the birth control pills from a woman,
mm,
they actually start to like men with more masculine features. That's the funny thing. That's what I'm saying. When they're on the pill, because they don't have that sexual attraction, they're looking for something outside of that testosterone that women seek. And what is the outside of that testosterone level that a man can give?
Mm.
So it's a psychological effect.
Mm.
And if you don't feel sexually attracted, that means you're not having healthy sex as a partner. That is even more scary because your libido is low. So you have a partner more for other reasons than attraction, love, biological, necessities, et cetera, et cetera. That is what is staggering about the studies happening with birth control. And it's kind of scary because in these studies, we can see how women that have birth control are starting to like more of men with more of a soft look, more of that, having more of a feminist look. And David, I don't know if David can explain the chemistry happening in the body.
So, this comes from the, shall we say, something psychological in the part of choosing well in the species. Then that need to choose the alpha male of the society that surrounds you. When a woman is about to ovulate, she needs the most masculine trait because you need to have offspring that can be strong, that can survive, and that can have many more opportunities within that society. So before ovulation, women kind of look at this psychologically, these types of features, these types of shoulders, because it's from the strongest, the one who can have good genes for procreation, and that this new individual, this child, can be, let's say, the leader of the pack. Let's put it this way. But when this hormonal part passes, on the other hand, they are already looking, if you say in the psychological part, with both less root, because that part of species selection. Let's put it this way. So this is something purely psychological, and it is also loaded by the hormonal part because they are different hormonal stages. So this is also linked to the attraction part. So if you put in a hormone that will alter your hormonal part, it will generate different cycle. It will generate different attraction. But here I think we have seen a lot of questions, but I think we all have to educate ourselves here. Is educating, especially the youngest, the fact of responsible sexuality? Having responsible sexuality is the same as starting to have intimacy with a partner of the opposite sex, which is the only reason why we can generate a new life. Is that there is a greater responsibility first with your body, because you have to know how to take your partner first. Second, at the moment in which they have this activity or this relationship, because by knowing the woman's body, the menstrual cycle, can it be applied? It's called rhythm contraception. As long as the woman has a period, let's say routine, we can use that there without the option of any pills or contraception. But today's society lives in dire straits, and you no longer expect, and above all, a teenager. You never wait. So one is more urgent already at our age. We are more passive and we think a lot, of course, but not when we are young. The same hormonal presence means that no, let's not wait, of course.
And I just wanted to add, as a matter of fact, Otto, I agreed with what you say, how the use of sex in a relationship. I completely agree with what you said. So I just wanted to make sure that one thing wasn't confused with the other. But it's true. It's true. And what David is saying too, it's the responsibility, and also we need, like, from a biological point of view, also when you are young, in your youth, especially in women, it's so important to not only educate people sexually, but to understand, like, the changes that are happening, because, like I said, the ovaries are talking to the hypothalamus, and that's how they're starting to understand the reproductive system.
Mm.
And like David is saying, it's funny because I was just telling I told a friend years ago. He was like, he wanted to, um, he wanted to be with, he wanted to have a baby, right? And he was like, "Oh, my wife is always in a bad mood, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Does she take birth control pills?" I asked him, and he was like, "No." I was like, "Okay, so wait until the ninth day. She'll probably be more attracted to you, like David was saying." She'll probably start looking at you, look a little tough, go to the gym, buff up a little bit. She'll probably come crawling to you because of it. And it's not that the woman is being promiscuous. It's just the call of nature in chemistry and biology for women to be predisposed for this. And it's funny because the birth control pill stops that natural cycle of how women should feel. And Autumn, you ever heard when they say like women are unpredictable with their emotions? I
Yeah.
could tell you that's not true.
Hmm.
If women didn't take birth control pills, they will be super predictable.
Well, even like that's why I love that David mentioned the natural family planning, right? Because like so when you're, let's say you take a woman who's not on birth control, right? She is experiencing the cycles still of her body, right? So if you're ovulating, you tend to be more um sad, right? Or wait, no, is it your luteal phase? No, I think it's in your luteal phase where you just start to hit a low. And then in your follicular phase, you have more energy, and your menstrual cycle, you're shedding the lining, so you kind of feel tired, you want to do things more slowly. Um, and then there's another in your other cycle, you're like ready to take on the world. So it's like if she leans into those phases and kind of like she eats according to her cycle, um that's what I've been learning about actually, like eating according to your cycle, leaning into the emotions you feel during your cycle. Honestly, right, like you're saying, it tends to make more sense and you don't feel so like out of whack. um but right, like when you're on birth control, it's like you're putting a pause on all of that. And I know some women still bleed on birth control, but it's not a real period. It's like a false bleed that's happening. And so your body, think about a woman who's on birth control for like 15 years. Her body has not released what needs to be released. It's actually crazy to think about.
Mm. Oh, it's so funny? Like, so Autumn is ever since she's been educating me on it, like I could sometimes like tell like which phase along she's in on like the four phases, like the four seasons of the month. So I'm like it's great because like she's been educating me for it, which I like, like why would I like need to know that as I'm growing up? I'm playing sports more than anything rather than picking up like until I have a girlfriend, right? And so I have a girlfriend, she starts telling me about it. I'm like, oh, it's all making sense now. So it's the education way that could also connect us men to adhere or to tier along with that cycle base. Like we could assist. So the moods are gonna come either way. Like we were just saying, like it's gonna go up and down. You're gonna be sad at some points because not because you're just
Yeah.
sad, but because your body is just going
Th-
through.
and this is why women are like, if they didn't have, let's say normally most women that wouldn't take birth control, you can kind of tell what their mood is going to be.
Mm.
But think about it, now you're on birth control, and just think about not only the cognitive changes, but also how women respond to stress because of these changes. Like David was saying, the hypothalamus is confused. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to stimulate the ovaries. We're supposed to have a baby. Let's go. And then suddenly, like, oh, are we? Or oh, we're not. Okay, we're stopping this. And now I'm prolonging. You got to remember, the damn, I forgot the name of it. The Not estrogen. What's the other hormone? So the oh my god,
Testosterone, progesterone.
yeah, progesterone. So that hormone is there to conceive a baby, embrace the fetus. So it's getting kind of like it's going to that stage all the time. So it disrupts the communication. So what happens? Your cortisol levels go up. It produces stress. The body doesn't know. Think about it. Our brain doesn't like to be uncomfortable. Our brain likes to be comfortable. It doesn't, that's why we have a hard time adapting, correct? To change abruptly. Think about like every month your body is confused. Wouldn't your brain get stressed about the communication happening? And that your body's trying to do something biologically natural and it's get disrupted all the time.
Mhm.
Just think about that. I was going to ask David about, what he knows about that kind of in chemistry.
But
Yes, let's see. First of all, everything works in a proper way. If everything works properly in our body, it passes calmly. We ourselves generate correct answers, but when you alter the balance, as in everything, produces chaos, and this chaos will be generated in different parts of our body, starting with the hormonal part, behavior changes, headaches, dizziness. There may also be another stage, which is the cellular part and the part also of our liver, let's say. So that is where the majority medications or anything that we administer orally is going to be metabolized in the liver as well. All this can produce hepatotoxicity. If we abuse many medications or we abuse food, then we are going to have alterations not only in behavior, in the brain part, in the hypothalamus part, or in the part of our reproductive organs, because we change the normal balance of our body. And all this generates changes and reactions that our body warns that it is not well. Headaches, nausea, irritability, low libido, that already tells us that our body is not well, with alerts or menstruation that are not menstruation, let's put it this way, that they are bleeding, swelling, abdominal pain, and I'm telling you, even hepatotoxicity, because we also don't know how our liver is doing. Then everything changes between the biological and chemical part. Also because the neuronal receptors are also in concatenation with the chemical part. So an imbalance, it causes many chain reaction, and our body responds to this through these alerts to tell us we are not well, something is not right, we are not well with attention. So I believe that there are ways to avoid first controlling, knowing our body, educate not only ourselves, but also our partner or our partners, because maybe there are people who have multiple partners. So it's education. I believe that the basis of everyone will always be communication and communication, because this is how we learn to know, even if these methods are causing any problems to the couple.
The scary thing is, as you're talking about, the birth pills and the effects, we don't even know how it could react because there hasn't been enough studies done about how can it react to uh, depression pills. And the reason why I say this because birth pills produces a lot of depression and anxiety, especially when you're young and you start taking from a young age. That's a fact. It's there. We know that. But what happens when you add now another pill to that? And there's not enough studies yet. I know there's investigations and all that, but there's not enough studies. So I can't tell you what the effect is. But if the off balance of your hormones created depression, now because of that, you got to take antidepressive pills. So, and again, it's all about that confusion generated in your brain, and it's sad to see that. What it's almost like David is saying, like there needs to be a better sexual education, not only for men and women, but also as a couple. How are you going to, especially if you're not planning to have a baby, let's say, right? You can still have sex, but just be careful around the time frames, correct? And use other mechanisms that are more natural and safe. I wanted to ask Autumn something. Me, David, and Kevin will never know what it feels. But
para
what
kota,
To tell you something else, let's further examine the situation. Once you cease taking these oral contraceptives numerous times, when the couple decides to have a child, it frequently becomes challenging due to the abrupt changes induced by the introduction of this false information into your body, as it is false information that stems from exogenous substances making the body behave unnaturally and not as it should be transported. Therefore, if our hypothalamus is thrown into confusion, it is unable to accurately signal the right hormone in precise quantities. If my cycle has been repeatedly interrupted, it signals that it will cease hormone production and follicle maturation. Consequently, this causes problems, particularly when you make the responsible decision to conceive. Additionally, complications arise because your body has been so confused that many couples face significant difficulties or even fail to conceive.
It creates what David is saying is true. It creates a different behavior.
Yeah.
Just like the hormone creates a different behavior about sexual attraction to a male. Because think about it, if you don't have that high libido, then you look for a man that is not so masculine. What is something that is close to a man that doesn't have masculine features? So yes, it changes the behavior. Hormones, we need to understand hormones change behaviors. They are almost like a production of how we feel. They're so important and relevant in our life. We need it, but we need it to be balanced. When you off balance it, it creates a new you, a different version of you, even if you are against it. And it's not about your mental conviction, it's about your biological chemistry inside that is dictating you to change. And it's something almost like, again, because what happened, like David is saying, it's like you're lying to your hypothalamus all the time. And then if you lie to someone so many times, you're going to believe it, right? It's like, we don't need to produce any more of this. Who cares? So it's interesting because hormones definitely change behaviors. It does. It has a big effect on that. I wanted to ask Autumn. Like I said, me, Kevin, and David would never know what this looks like, and I'm just curious. Autumn.
Yeah.
What does it feel to have a period? Like, is it uncomfortable? And again, like, I'm curious because, we're talking about women's health and probably is a bad but beautiful experience. I don't know because I could never experience that.
Mhm. Well, I will say every woman's period is different. So like mine is very different from my best friend's period because she never experienced cramps at all. She says like it just happens upon her. Like she'll wake up and she just has it. And for me, it's the opposite case. Um, I get very severe, like it's severe cramping. Um, that will last like I'll know it's coming like 2 days before, I start experiencing cramps, and then when it arrives, um, like, sometimes I can't get out of bed. It's very painful, which is not normal, I've learned, but yeah, so you typically, like, your, bleeding days will differ among women. I get it for 8 days. I know women who get it for 3, maybe 4. Um, so mine's a little out of whack, but even researching lately, like it's not just the days that you're bleeding, it's all of your phases. So really trying to like lean into that has been so helpful for just like understanding my own body. Um, like when you're feeling low and how your body is really preparing. And it's so beautiful. Like your body is working um, to prepare to bring life into the world. And I think it's such a gift. It is so beautiful to know, like, this is what my body can do and this is what it's preparing for. And it's actually a superpower. Like, it's nothing, like, it doesn't make us little, like, there's nothing weird about it. It's honestly really cool. And I was listening to a podcast the other day where one of the main hosts said her daughter um, had her period. And so she invited all of her female friends over, the mom, and they had tea and cookies. And all of the women just spoke about their own experiences with their menstruation cycle and gave her daughter like advice and tips. And I just thought it was so beautiful, like how the women came together and kind of like passed down this knowledge. I feel like that's something that we should do more of, and just like bring more awareness to what it really means to have a period and what it means to go and become a woman, right? Because when you get your period, they say you've become a woman. Um, and it really is, it's such a beautiful thing to know, like, there's so much detail in every phase you're going through, every cycle you're going through. And it is helpful sometimes to just curl up with a heating pad, have a cup of tea and, sleep the cramps away. But no, it makes me proud to be a woman, and it's really beautiful.
That's awesome. I'm pretty sure, Kevin, you see her in those moments, and we probably experienced that same thing, and we see somebody cramp up, and we're like, we don't even know sometimes what to do. Like, you want a painkiller, you know.
Like,
We see the pain, and I don't know if you guys want to talk about your particular experience seeing your loved one, with cramps and going through the cycle.
oh yeah, like I don't sometimes I don't really know what to do. I'm like, you want a blanket, you want some water, you want a hug? I'll give you a hug. Like those little things. It's like I think it's like the little things like that help out. Like just I guess presence being there. But then it's like different stuff. I don't really know where to assist. I try, the best effort, the best thing to do, what I realize is just to give an effort because that it gets recognized, and when it's like an emotional whirlpool too, it gets recognized to a 10 times the max. Or it could be flipped the other way where it's like you're not doing enough. But it's never like that. But
Maybe she gets better when you eat bananas in front of her. That
Yeah,
would- right?
right.
David, te quería preguntar algo.
Eres
En
un
el
buen
punto,
tipo.
en
Que eres un buen tipo.
he's the man. Eh, David, desde un punto de vista químico, ¿qué tú consideras que es, qué es lo que ocurre cuando, desde un punto químico, cuando se produce el estrógeno?
Wow.
Well, estrogen is produced, it is the female hormone, and that has to generate all the changes in the female cord that needs to do it. As you say, we already saw it. The hypothalamus has to generate an adequate amount to maintain each of the parts. Let's say that reproduction starts from a good cycle and that there is no imbalance. I think our body knows how much we need and what we need when it cannot occur. Imbalances and diseases come, or in this case, complications such as those that Gold has, which is perhaps there is a part of her body that she cannot have enough, or that there is something anatomically that prevents her from having a more friendly cycle. But that's what he has Kevin for, who for the next cycle is going to eat a lot of bananas to help them. No, but you know what? What's good about that now? There is greater support, and that is why I believe that that part of also sharing that experience, not only of having your partner, but of understanding it in the cycle where there are beautiful situations and others not so much, that a moment comes where his mood also changes, and be there, even if it is for so that they say something to you or get angry in common. But it is good because it also serves as a liberation for them, because they are in a roulette of emotions, and it is not their fault that they tell you something that often makes you angry. I think that part of education is that having that accompaniment too, because we don't know what's going on and we don't feel what they feel. We know biologically what's happening or what's going to happen, but accompaniment is the important thing. And what those hormones are going to do is make them have all that carousel of emotions that women have. So we don't have as many as they do. I do consider that you have to give them greater value in that good point, and a lot, especially in the hormonal part, those hormonal imbalances, the part of the pills that causes you another imbalance so that things move in a different direction and that they don't go crazy is a great merit of them.
No, and to vouch, remember I was telling you like women's hormonal cycles are make women very predictable. On the other hand, men testosterone doesn't make them. We're very unpredictable. And I will give you a good example of that behavior, right? Put a man to watch their football team, and they're winning. What do you think happens there? Testosterone, right? It's unpredictable. It's not a cycle like women has a routine cycle. If it's healthy, it has a very routine cycle, and you can predict the behaviors. Men, put them in. There's studies that have put men in a gun room, and the testosterone go high. That's how unpredictable we are with our hormones, as opposed to women that, although it's way more complex, they have a steady cycle. But unfortunately, for those that are on birth control pills, it gets interrupted, and it brings a different type of off balance, emotional, psychological, chemical, biological, and it has a big effect on these things. You know what? One of the things that I am perhaps a little concerned is how can we educate our younger generation on how to be more responsible with one, taking care of our women if they're our partners, so they don't fall into taking pills or something that is going to disrupt their hormonal balance. What ideas do you have? I would like to start with Autumn, because Autumn is our G star today.
Great question. Um, I think there needs to be a lot of open communication. I think there needs to be a heavy emphasis on nutrition, right? Because we like what we eat and put into our bodies is for nourishment and for longevity, right? And to have good health. And a lot of our like reproductive health stems from the food that we eat. It comes from like fragrances, not wearing fragrances, and really just like honing into how to be the healthiest version of yourself. And I think that needs to be taught from a young age. I wasn't taught that. The doctors that I would go to, they really wouldn't. They would just, like I was mentioning, promote birth control so heavily. There wasn't like, let's go over your diet, let's go over your nutritional state, like let's really like make sure that you're healthy all around. Um, and it's honestly just about having open communication. It's also educating the younger generation, which I feel like is starting to happen. A lot of people are coming to learn about the history of birth control and the history of Planned Parenthood, and it's not rosy and beaches like everybody makes it seem. It has a very dark history. It had a very dark origin. And when you think about that, like why Margaret Sanger created birth control, it just makes you go like, wait, hold on. Like I honestly don't trust what these people are promoting as healthcare for women. And it makes you just like take control of your own health and like seeing what's available to you, right? And honestly, when you do your own research, it kind of like you become more well informed. You don't just take things for face value. And I think the way to educate our younger generation is just to encourage open conversations, encourage them to read these resources, encourage them to understand that their body is amazing and it has a function and a role and it's awesome. Um, but we really need to dive deep and we need to educate ourselves and not just accept anymore birth control as a band-aid, because it also like has very bad health effects, right? Like a lot of people end up with blood clots, right? Or they end up having strokes or heart attacks, and it's the cause of birth control is the cause of that. So I'd say, yeah, communication and just research too, and nutrition.
I think to add, I love what you said, Autumn. I think also, as a couple, to plan, like these are the days we have to restrain if we don't want to have a baby,
Yeah.
because it also takes about, like you were saying, like responsibility, but also control. Especially if you love somebody, it's
Mm.
gonna be hard. It's like I was like, I'm gonna go to my mom's house for these couple days.
Well, that's the beauty of natural family planning, right? Because the woman's body, because David was mentioning this too, like because of the cycles, I think you can only get pregnant really like for 12 hours on like the day that you guys do the deed. And then like the man's sperm lives in her body for 5 days, right? So she can get pregnant after that. But it's honestly like it's really difficult to conceive. It's difficult to get pregnant. And so like right, if you guys lean into that cycle and really understand like, okay, like, well, when I'm ovulating, maybe we should abstain, right? It's just again, open communication and not being embarrassed to have those conversations.
I have a question for all of you guys. Like, let's say like a lot of women are educated on the effects of birth control pills on their body, but they still decide to take it. Why you think it's the number one reason why they continue to take it, although they know it has an effect on them? I don't know who wants to go first. I see everyone raising their hand, so calm down, guys.
I think like sometimes they take it to try to please their man, right? Or sometimes like sometimes I also hear like when Autumn gets back from her GYN, like the doctors will recommend it to make the period less harmful, but not harmful, but more or less painful, like to take the cramps away. But it's not really like taking the cramps away. Like as like as I learned from all that, like it doesn't take the cramps away. It just it slows down the cycle. Like what we've been talking about, it just slows down the cycle. It doesn't stop it. It's an abrupt stop, and then it has to open up again. Um, so it's interesting because they'll take it because they're doctors, maybe to please, maybe not to have a child because they also know the responsibility of the child. Maybe fear of like also being pregnant. Like there might be like many reasons of like why someone would take it even knowing it's harm because of X, Y, Z. I guess the way to educate the young woman about it is so they could, if they feel comfortable in X, Y, and Z, maybe they'll feel more comfortable having sex without taking the contraceptives. Like maybe there might even be like a married couple out there that even takes these birth control and contraceptive pills, just so they don't have a kid. But it's just it goes down into maybe feeling confident in the subsections of the responsibilities of sex, like just feeling confident in the sections. That's what I think. I think they just take it because of lack of in the subsections.
What do you think, David?
A ver,
Here you have to look at several aspects. One, as we saw, when you are in a situation where when you are with your partner, stop, because the same hormonal phase asks me to take into account. Then you cannot control that. Apart from that, because this society is being created in the immediacy, you need something immediate for everything. So the society currently acquires everything at the moment. So since you can give him all the contraceptive methods, he just sees this, I take this and nothing happens. Calm down, let's go. Second, what these contraceptive methods do is that the cycle will reach you in one way, let's say deceiving your own body. But will the menstrual cycle arrive? If you're not pregnant, then the worry is when it doesn't arrive. Here comes the concern of a possible pregnancy, but this menstrual cycle will arrive late or perhaps in less time. And the imbalance is suffered by us, our brain, then, well, and other parts parts of the ovaries, the luteal or the fallopian tubes. All this is seen as a change, nothing else inside that we cannot see. But there's nothing to stop you from taking them. You do it because, and it is done because. Is it in the immediate? No, you cannot control the same hormones. Many times you are made not to control yourself. It also depends on what phase of the cycle the woman is in and where she's least controlled, because if she is close to ovulation, the desire will increase and no one will stop there. So the easiest thing is, or don't we take care of ourselves? This is the solution, but in itself it is not the solution. The solution comes from the very moment of having used another contraceptive method, because what is not there is, let's say, having an irrationality, because you are not controlling the part of some disease. It can be by contact. So there's a double problem. It is, we're ruled by hormones. And because of the immediacy that I can have something at this moment that can help me, in quotes, come on TV, we are going to give it. So that's why education is followed, and we have to educate ourselves. I believe that we all need to know more about the cycle, not only us as men, but women, not only as women, to know the different types of behavior and when you can.
Absolutely.
Autumn, what are your thoughts?
Um, you guys bring up a lot of great points. I think some reasons why women would take birth control is, one, motherhood is seen as a burden and a disease right now in our society.
You hit it on a high note on that one.
Yeah, and it's very sad because like women are life bearers. They bring life into this world, and motherhood is a very important job. So is fatherhood, honestly. But I think birth control and abortion, they're looked at as ways to eradicate a disease. And sadly, like, that's why a lot of women take it. They also take it because there's this notion of like, well, it's not fair that a man can't get pregnant and they don't have to carry a baby for 9 months. And it's almost like a prideful reaction of like, well, I want to be like a man and not have a burden, and I want to have sex freely. And they want to be able to sleep around and not have a consequence. And when you remove sex from what it was intended for, which is to bring a child into this world, preferably in marriage, right? You like messed up the equation. And that's why a lot of women today, they really like, it's almost like they're skeeved out by the notion of motherhood, and so it's easy for a woman to take it. But then, later on, there's a lot of women who, yes, they're successful, they're incredible women who are crushing it in the workforce, and yet later on in life, it just happens. Like, they want a family, they want to be a mom, they want to get married, they want to have children. And sometimes women can't, right? For many reasons, for whatever reasons, but it's a natural calling to a woman's heart. And I love that in the beginning of this conversation, I think before we started filming, you had asked, like, what is a woman? And a woman is, she's a daughter, she's a sister, she's a friend, she's a wife, and she's a mother, and she's an individual who can nurture from her heart. And I think a lot of women now, they see that it's been demonized to nurture and to like love from your heart. And it's really one of the most beautiful things that makes a woman unique, is her ability to care and nurture and just like welcome people in. And so I think, like, by taking a birth control pill, it gives an illusion of a false sense of freedom, that I can use my body in whatever way I want. And that's what's being used as healthcare. It just still blows my mind. I'm like, what? Okay.
I think there's also, and I'm going to reference to all of us, and I would love to hear your answer, guys, on this question. We talk about, Plan B and birth control pills, but when you're in a relationship with, let's say, with a spouse or your partner, why is the use of a condom such a taboo? Especially if the menstrual cycle, because that goes on us, guys. We can't blame women on that one. That goes on us. And I would love to hear, Autumn's perspective, like, because if let's say we know women's cycle, menstrual cycle, right? We already know like the days that she's gonna be heavily a high possibility of being pregnant if you have sex with her. Why is it that it's a taboo to wear a condom when you already have a life partner? And to me, and that's the other thing. Somebody has to invent something better than a condom. FY.
Oh, so the question, like, when you have your life partner, I don't think it should be a. I know, right? I don't know why it is such a taboo to use it when you have a life partner, right? Because it's like, hey, the condom is just that it's another contraceptive for the guys, to be safe during. No, I hate to say it as safe, because it's like what do you mean like save it? Like yeah, it's hard. I haven't experienced kids. I don't know speculating, right? So I don't really know. So I'm hearing from different experiences that other people have and learning from their perspective. So what I've learned is that it's hard to raise a kid, and it's hard to do a lot. It changes your life, as it should change your life. Uh, so I guess as lifelong partners, I don't think like a condom should be uh I know like it shouldn't be used because you guys are lifelong and it is that natural process. It's the bonding. You don't want to interrupt something or have a piece in the middle between the bond. At the same time, you also don't want another You also don't want another interruption, which might be kids. Again, my speculation, because I don't have, but they might like it could create another bond. So I guess what is your take on the lifelong longevity?
Me? Um,
Damn. Kevin put her on the spot.
um, well, so like let's put it in the context of marriage, right? So to use a condom in marriage, I think it's like negating the fact that like you both in your wedding vows, right? The purpose of sex is to restate your wedding vows through your body, and that's why it's so sacred. Um, and so basically, you both are laying down your lives for each other. So that includes your body, and like you guys are becoming one. There's a lot of beauty happening. So to use a condom in the middle of the act, like while you're married, is you're basically preventing life. It is what it is. You're preventing life from happening. Where the act of sex is, you guys love each other so much that that love can produce a fruit, which is a child, right? Which is the greatest thing ever. Um, because God is creator, and the fact that He gave us that ability to create, it's really beautiful. And I think that's it's always under attack because of that. But yeah, you're preventing life at the end of the day. We can dress it up however we want, but just to be a straight shooter, I think like you wear contraceptives, condom, birth control, you're preventing life from happening.
The natural family planning also it could be seen as another perspective preventing life, because then if you're just going to use sex just to reproduce, then you'll do it on the date where she's ovulating and just only on the date when she's ovulating.
Well, right, and like natural family planning can be used too to like if let's say the family is having financial issues, right, and you guys need to abstain. That's also why natural family planning is put in place.
Like sex is good because it's not only for life, it's that bonding
Yeah.
and experience, right? So it's
Mhm.
like natural family planning, it could be seen as also a way of preventing.
Well, it's also a way of the heart, right? So like every time you have sex, you should be open to life in your heart because life life is not always going to come, right? There are many couples who struggle with infertility and it's a real struggle for them, but in their hearts, every time they come together as one, their hearts are so open for life. Um, and that's a good examination of conscience. Like, are you open to life or are you having sex for yourself, right? And your own pleasure. And all of that I think to say like our culture today is really ingrained in the culture of death. It's not a culture of life. So even like this discussion we're having right now, like a lot of people would be like, thinking like that I'm crazy for saying this, but you should have an openness to life because it's something bigger than yourself. And if you can come together as one with the person you love, like, and have a child come from that, that's a beautiful thing. So, a long-winded response. I'm sorry.
That's all good. ¿Qué piensas?
Primero eres malo. ¿Por qué le haces esa pregunta a Kevin estando por un lado?
Damn. David is saying that through you.
Lo veo sudando.
I
lo
swear
veo
to God,
sudando.
I swear to God, it was not done with those.
Me sweating? Cold, yes.
I was there.
I would touch and feel it. Ice cold.
Autumn is gonna kill you, Kevin. I'm so sorry, bro. No, I'm messing with you, Autumn.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like you see it, like the beads dripping down. It's good. You should have seen those, like, here my heartbeat's beating fast. Like,
No, it's a very I would say it's a very sensitive topic.
Look at this first. We all know goodbye culture that one, when you use a condom, it is first as a contraceptive method and to avoid transmitting diseases. No, and you use it when you have multiple partners. So when this already goes to a marital or couple relationship, not only marital, but with the couple with whom you are already beginning to live together, you don't want to bring that part of using condoms when you have multiple partners to avoid the transmission of diseases. No. So when you have a stable partner, you stop using it because it is psychologically associated with having multiple partners. So already when you already have an exclusivity, you kind of stop using it and use other methods to avoid it at the time because you have to plan. I think the most responsible thing is planning a new life. So when you have a stable partner, you begin to plan, and within that planning, if a child comes, you accept it with all the love in the world, both from your partner and from you. Can it happen to you? Yeah, it can happen. So I believe that when you already have a stable partner, a partner with whom you already share, you maintain a greater affinity and already a sexual activity, you already stop using the condom because it is more associated with when you have multiple partners or when you are going to have multiple partners. So that also gives it some exclusivity, and you give the couple you're with right now the exclusivity they deserve. And here come other types of methods. So I think that's why you no longer use it as contraception and as an anti to prevent transmitted diseases. When you think you are stable, you stop using it and use other methods for that reason, because there you give exclusivity to that couple. That is why condoms are often stopped.
And I like David's response, and also Kevin and Autumn's. I do think like when it's true. Like why would you use a condom when someone you trust and love? Because it creates like a barrier also. But also, how do you plan to have a life with someone, especially when you know you are in that age and stage of high reproduction that you can conceive? And I do think it's like behavior as well. Like when you're with somebody for so long with a partner, you can kind of tell, like, okay, this might sound a little ridiculous, but you can have outside ejaculations as well. But knowing your own body as a man, right? Let's say you guys are not planning to have a child because you went through financial strands, or you're having some financial issues, or you're there's consequences if your wife gets pregnant once more, she can die because there's very sensitive pregnancies. So I do think it's the planning of it too. Like, and we as a men, we should know what that feels like too, and talk to our partners. Hey, are you okay with this mechanism that is natural? There's no barriers, but it's something that can help us plan our life, but also, understanding what our female partner also needs. Because you got to remember, women are in a biological clock too. We are never in a clock. Men are never in a clock. We don't have that kind of pressure. As a matter of fact, condom is used because we are scared of the unknown. If we have a child, we don't even, let's say you're promiscuous, you have a child with somebody, you don't know what your future is going to look like, or is that the woman of your life? Now you got to suffer the consequences of it. And so, what has a condom done? Release that stress and that overthinking process that, okay, I can be safe, I can do this, and there's no consequences. But is that really being responsible? Like that's the problem. The behavior, how we behave and how we communicate with our partner. It's like, hey, how many, like, out of curiosity, it's like how many kids would you like to have? And if they say 2 or 3, and let's say, hey, what about we have 3 or 2, whatever the game plan is, if, like David is saying, you have an extra child, you know, it's a blessing, it's a miracle. Life is a miracle itself. You're supposed to bless it and go within, try to do the best that you can as a father and a mother. That's all you can do. there's no there's no perfect parenthood. There is no such thing as read this book and you will be, my God, a magnificent parent. No, because life is full of circumstances that perhaps other people have never lived and that you will only experience. And nobody can tell, they can advise you, yes, this and that, but the practice is completely different than the advice or the theory. So I do think like the communication is essential, but it is a taboo. Married men would rather see their women suffer through birth control pills than wear a condom. And I do think that this is where you also, like, we men have to debate, like, what is more important? How we feel about, if we don't use a condom versus my wife is suffering with these birth control pills. And I can see it. I don't know what you guys think. Autumn, what is your take on that?
Um, I mean, my opinion is just very like different. I think like you guys should be like let's take a random couple for example. Like I think they should be on the same page regarding um like whether they're going to use an NFP method or just like how they're going to go about having sex together because I think like the contraceptives for me in my opinion it is like you prohibiting life whether or not like when you get married you are jumping into the unknown, right? And you are embracing like God's will for your life. And whether that be that you guys are blessed with children or you're blessed with waiting for children, because we don't know if we can have children unless you start trying. But I think that that's a conversation. I don't know, Kevin, if you want to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the hard things is like I don't know why. The guys should like really, really do take in mind with their women's health and really just wrap it up. Like it's not too hard to wrap up, but it's not as uh, extensive as taking a pill at this time every week or every day for something like control. You had to do routine wise, but like yeah, I don't think it should be too hard in that sense for guys to do that, especially for if they love their woman and they don't want to see them go through like any hormonal changes, like what we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, for things that are entropy in the long term. It's the trickling of bad hormones that will create a bigger effect in the lady's body. Uh, so a condom doesn't do that to them. So I think like yeah, guys need to just keep their ladies in mind.
Definitely. ¿Qué piensa, David?
The questions, who are you asking? You put it wrong, don't you? Look, You have to start from the point of view that being a woman is very complicated. It's very, very complicated. I have 3 women in my house. They are all different worlds, my wife and my 2 daughters. And I know it is very complicated, not only for part of society. He's very cruel to them. Also, the hormonal changes that they have to endure in each menstrual cycle, the changes in behavior. Many times we as men are not that patient. Well, everyone is patient, and it's like riding a roller coaster of up and down emotions. And if we can make his life a little easier, and that's in the accompaniment during their cycle when they feel good and when they feel bad too. I believe that, as I always tell my daughters, a woman has to know how to choose and choose well. Above all, choose well who your partner is going to be, and with them you will have all the freedom, and you will exploring everything you want is knowing how to choose well, because being a woman is already very complicated. It is the same physiological, biological, and social. So if we can make their life a little easier, it would be better for them to have less burden, and especially on the part of contraception. We can use less invasive, less harmful methods. For her, it would be best. And above all, for there to be good communication between couples to be able to reach the best agreement. Above all, control the fertility of that couple. Depending on what you consider at that moment with your partner, maybe you can say, look, what do you think if we plan 2 years from now? In 2 years, you reuse methods to not get pregnant, and then they decide to get pregnant. And they do, and it is planning according to something beneficial for both of them. So Oron is the woman of the group and knows that. It is already very complicated in itself, and you will agree with me. I believe in what I have indicated.
Yeah, and you know, I have a lot of respect for everything Autumn said, because Autumn, you were talking about this woman that created the birth control pills, and it's almost like we it's almost like society put this whole pressure on women to have, I would say, control over like birth control, literally. Why? Like we don't even understand why a woman would give that kind of pressure to a woman. We understand, like, yes, it was because of race and many other factors, but after that, it became more of a like a culture.
Mm-hmm. I love what David was saying too, because I agree with him. Like it really matters who you choose as a partner, as a spouse. Because like a woman needs to know her worth, right? And I agree with what David's saying. Like a woman will experience so many emotions, but like if you choose your partner wisely, you guys will be on the same page. I think like you can see the difference like post sexual revolution and then before the sexual revolution. Like there was a very high family culture, even in TV shows. Like family life was constantly being promoted versus now, like, and the demise after the sexual revolution was just like a life of promiscuity, a life of, you know, never choosing a partner, a life of choose work over family for women. Um, you know, you need to be more successful than a man. It's all this propaganda, I feel like, that just erupted, right? And it's really convinced a lot of women that, you know, having a family is like the worst thing that can ever happen to you. Sadly, a lot of women believe this. But if you pick somebody who has the same beliefs as you, who has the same like culture of life as you, where you guys want to create a family together, you know, you guys won't have to worry about contraception, right? Because you guys have the same ideals, and you know, like, okay, well, this is used for marriage, and then like, if God blesses us with a family, he blesses us with a family, but I'm not going to oppose life. And it really matters. He has such a great point, and I love what he was saying about his daughters and that they all have a world within themselves. That was so poetic and beautiful. Such a beautiful example of fatherhood. You know, we need strong fathers out there, and we need strong mothers, because they are the ones who shape the next generation. You know.
Definitely. I love what you said. because choosing a partner is also choosing them for the plan and for alignment, but also on how to come with solutions too. And sometimes when we choose a partner, we want, and I'm not saying this is all of us, but the vast majority wants to choose a partner that is very similar to them. But sometimes you need also a little bit of opposition to challenge you in a good way, not in a bad way. So it's always good to have a little bit of, like, for example, an outside perspective, but for good, not for bad, because you can also have somebody that has an outside perspective, but they're leading you into destruction.
Mm.
And again, I can tell you, like, past partners that have been, let's say, advising me on something that was destructive, and you can kind of tell that, where are you leading me with these ideals or principles? But you can also tell the ones that are leading you to, like, to the promised land, to a place where you can feel safe. And sometimes your mindset is not in the right place, and you need that kind of debacle. You need that kind of perspective to kind of like open up your eyes. Because again, like, I realized that, like, I wasn't the owner of the truth, and my moments of biggest stupidity is when I ignore good advice too. So it humbled me to always, like, say, okay, if I want to marry myself, how am I going to be challenged psychologically? How am I going to be challenged to be someone better every day? I need someone that has the same game plan as me or similar, but we learn how to work differences, but at the same time, we challenge each other to grow. And we love each other because of that. It's like we scale together, and it doesn't matter in what realm of life we are, because you can be in the beginning stages of growing, and I can be on the high stages. That doesn't mean me as a partner is going to belittle your beginnings, such as you can't make my ascents bigger because I'm all the way up there. We're equal at the same time. Doesn't matter what position we belong in the status quo, because at the end of the day, like, what is our partnership is all about? It's about love, and in love there is no hierarchies. We're all the same. We all feel the same. We all want to embrace one another. And, but relationships are so complex too. They're so hard. We human beings are, you know, we sometimes can't figure out ourselves, especially men. I can talk from a male perspective. We have to face many demons and insecurities, many things that our testosterone drives us to do sometimes stupid things. And then as you get older, you become wiser on how to control your testosterone. And it's something that we don't, that is talked too much in men. Like, when you're young, that testosterone is telling you to do, man, you think you're Superman. You can get away with anything. But as you go through, and I do think women bring that balance to our lives. This is why we dedicate this. We have to dedicate more time to women's health. We have to do this because they are the reason why we are in a better position in our life. We feel better about ourselves because we are not only raised by a mom and a dad, but we marry a woman at some point in our life. And they are the rib. They are such an essential key point in our life that without them, what do we become? And women are not just a reproductive biological system. No, they're complex, but that complexity is beautiful. But it makes us look more simple thanks to them. And that's one of the things I wanted to reflect about women in general. They're God's greatest creation that we so much need to learn how to embrace better. And we got to understand how to love them better through those up and downs. Like, we need to learn how to be better partners, be more patient, and also listen better. Because I think one of the biggest opportunities is learning how to listen. You know, I don't know. What are your guys' take about what I was just saying? I don't know if something reflected on you guys.
Yeah. I love how it is us men trying to also figure out how to balance our testosterone as well. And we should focus on the woman's health because we were raised by the mothers. We do go after a wife. We do try to find that one that also makes that 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 we can be whole together. Like we try to find those ones that like men and women they go one and one. We're the puzzle pieces to each other's lives. And it's important to understand what your partner is going through. Whether that is like what we were just talking about today, the menstrual cycles, life, and birth control. Those are three things that now us men are more educated about than we were the other days. And that can also help us out with, for example, with finding like the way that she finds the right and chooses the right man is also the man that could also understand what she's going through to take the
Yeah,
time.
and understanding is a process. It's not immediate rectification either. It's a process to understand someone. And that's what's important. It's like, and that's the beauty about being with a woman. I'm sorry to interrupt you because you just said something so beautiful. It's like that process of understanding is what makes you fall in love with them.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does, and it goes on both sides. Like she also has to understand his heart and what goes after his mileage, because it's the head and the neck. It's completing each other in that sense. Because like when she could also when you understand her, you can also understand the cycles that you guys are about to go through together, because it is going to be together with her. And then when she can also understand him, sh the unpredictability of the testosterone is something that is going to be hard, but maybe she could might understand certain ways of how he is during certain testosterone stuff. Like during a game, he gets hype and he starts jumping around. Or
I'll give you a good example. And I saw this the other day. In Autumn, I give you a lot of credit for something that perhaps and men undermine. Like when we were at the park and Kevin was, you know, in the park practicing Muay Thai and boxing. The patient and love, yes, and that we have to talk about that kind of love. How patient and loving was Autumn to know that, okay, Kevin has a lot of testosterone, he has a lot of energy, and she was so noble to go sit down, just sitting down there. And it's like that's the missing touch we miss on our woman. That is what we don't have. And I don't know scientifically is because of how I do think. Again, don't. This is not a practice or a theory. This is my hypothesis that definitely these hormones help our emotional intelligence and how to anticipate a need. And that hormone of a woman understands how to bring our testosterone levels down. And it understands that we have to do, I think, identifying those those opportunities with women. And I give you a lot of credit for that, Autumn. That was such a noble love act.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about it. I'm like, oh yeah, you can go work out, and it was something that made him happy. So I'm like, why would I stop him from doing something that he enjoys?
yeah, she does that a lot for me, which is great. Like I love it so much. And I'm like, I treasure so much too. Like especially when hiking as well. Like going into
Oh God, not the hiking story, bro. People are gonna hate you on this podcast.
yeah, right. They're gonna be like, "What? You took her around Where around snakes?
Yeah, attempted murder 2.0 on Kevin. David, ¿qué tú piensas? ¿Qué tú piensas de lo que estaba hablando en torno a comprender a nuestras parejas, mujeres?
At the moment that we choose to have a partner, I think that our partner, we choose it clearly because of an affinity, not only in the mental part, but that makes us end in the intellectual part. Our partner that we choose has to satisfy in multiple aspects of life. So not only in these aspects of life does it have to move us, but in the most passive ways. Our partner has to move us in multiple aspects. From the very fact of seeing her pass by, seeing her by our side,
know that
There.
there is no such thing.
Verbal communication.
that it excites us, their way of thinking, their way of seeing, of generating us, even the way in which it generates problems for us, because that also generates an attraction of how we solve those problems that arise to us in the day to day, especially when they have that emotional roulette for the century they are in, understanding and many times giving in a lot, that we do not do it in a coordinated way. Let's put it that way. If not, that they help us with that too. And then understanding all this and coming to understand makes them also choose and choose which person will be there at the same time. As I have always said, I believe that all of us, by learning to choose and choose, can achieve this. A good relationship with your partner is knowing how to choose your partner, feeling attracted to your partner, which generates many emotions for you. Good, bad. But those bad ones are going to turn into good ones because you don't see anything wrong with these, that's right. And they often help you heal many things that you thought you didn't have. So, and all these emotions are due to the hormonal part that we have seen now. So unbalancing the hormonal part in women means lack of control. Why not? If we had and knew our partner, this hormonal imbalance is going to make us also confused, and we do not react very well to confusion.
And I love what you said, Dave, because it's almost like we lose they lose their identity for that. We lose who they are as well as a woman. Autumn, what is your intake of what we were just talking? If you have anything.
Um, I think, yeah, I wish everything that David said, I totally agree with. I think that's what needs to be imparted on our brothers and sisters, our younger generation, like what it means to actually, what commitment means, what it means to pick a partner, to pick a spouse, right? Like, what are you looking for? What are your beliefs, right? Like, these are questions we need to ask ourselves. I listened to a quote the other day that I love. It's deep calls to deep, right? So we can't just live our lives in this shallow, like surface area. We need to go into the depths. And so we need to like rack our brains with, what are we looking for in life? And for my women who are listening out there, embrace the mystery of your heart and your body. And if there are questions about your health that you cannot find an answer to, I encourage you to keep researching, because there are answers out there. We just have to dig a lot to find the answers, but they are out there and they are beyond the realms of birth control. And contraceptives are not answers to our bodily health, and like the needs of our bodies. Birth control is not an answer to endometriosis or PCOS. Believe me, there are other answers out there. And I think the more that we value our health and our well-being, like the more that we'll demand answers from, the doctors that are in charge of this. And we can make a change and it'll be really beautiful. And on the other coin of birth control, yes, picking a spouse is so important. So that way you can cultivate a beautiful family life. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's true what you're saying, Autumn. Like at the end of the day, like we don't want to go against nature. And when you go against nature, we sometimes know that it leads to chaos, like David was saying, and at some point it would also could become destructive in other ways. And you could see that pattern not only chemically in your body, but also on your behavior and the way you think, and also the anxiety, depression you get. So, last question for Autumn, since we're gonna do women's health. Autumn, what will be the next topic you would like to choose? And thank you so much for being so open. Thank you for knowing how to control there's so much testosterone, but you were in there, and you're such a critical part of what we do that you have no idea how much like I embrace your leadership in the Ethics Guild podcast.
Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for dealing with my introverted self sometimes when I get nervous to answer some questions. I appreciate that. Appreciate the patience. Oh my gosh, the next topic, I have to think about it.
All right. Think about what the next topic is, but we are definitely going to have women's health at least once a month. I think women deserve that, and we will always have David with us, Kevin and Autumn, myself. Don't forget to subscribe, guys. It helps us a lot. Hit that like. This will be posted about in a month. So if you checked it live, that's the privilege you got to hear us talk about this topic that it could be very sensitive. But I just love how even if we have different opinions, different type of convictions, we were not here to judge on anyone's saying. As a matter of fact, we were so respectful to them that we piggyback on a positive way on how to interact with somebody else's conviction, even if they're not the same or they're slightly different. So I really value the fact that there's an environment of respect and professionalism here. And I want to leave David with the last word for today so he can close the show.
Well, I believe that we treat female reproductive health, and it is not only guided or governed by the use of birth control pills. There are also other methods in which we can have at hand that are not so invasive, so that do not unbalance your whole part. Many can say that these are not abortifacients, that they are not invasive, but we know that at the end of the day, we are generating an imbalance in women, a hormonal imbalance.
I ought to be on that side.
They consume all the medications, but there is also a part where I have to be self-critical and not everything. He has to go to take a pill. There are methods that can also help us solve certain health problems. There are others in which a medicine is necessary to generate well-being. But there are situations like these where you can pick and choose if you want to keep that contraceptive method, if you're liberal, if you're promiscuous, if you have in your head to satisfy yourself in a way. Carnal, let's put it that way. But I also invite you to think that that is not the way either, and that you have to take responsibility for your body and you can take care of it in a different way. And I believe that respecting your body means respecting yourself, respecting your temple. I don't want to direct it to a religious part, but you know your body and you can treat and not your body in an effective and natural way. Not everything has to be the consumption or consumerism of a medicine. I believe that we must also know how to respect the part of women, whether or not I want an oral contraceptive method. And there are methods in which we eat. These people's partners accept that, and with less invasive methods for them, because of the respect they have for their body, and we are condescending to that. For me, it would be easy to say we consume medications, but no, I think that's what this is about, because to look for a slightly more ethical, more logical and standardized meaning in that, there are other alternatives that our own body can generate. So I believe that this always leads us to reflect that if there is another way out, if there is another alternative, and we do not look for the easiest thing is not always the best. Therefore, when you have your partner, I think that sometimes it is difficult to find her, but when you find her, there is enormous satisfaction and there are no barriers too when you have it.
Muy bien dicho. And that concludes our episode today. And I do agree with David. Our body is a temple. So take good care of it. And we will see you next time. Thank you. Yay.
Thank you.
Good work, Autumn. Thank you so much, Autumn.
That was awesome, guys. You guys did
Now,
a good job.
I think this was I love how we handled because it's such a, like, for me, being a man, to talk about women health, it's like me talking about like what it feels to be pregnant. you know it could be seen as controversial, but something, at the end of the day, I think I tried to be neutral, but at the same time with based on science and respectful, and I really love the fact, I love how you express yourself through the podcast, Autumn.
It was great. I think you just shut it off. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, my screen's off.
Autumn is live now.
Ya está
But
más
this was a
relajado,
good show.
Kevin.
Yeah,
Está más relajado. Ya no va a tener preguntas.
David has been like, oh my God, Kevin, why are you asking me these questions? But honestly, I never did it with any, like, putting anyone on the spot. It was just like
No,
curiosity.
yeah.
Yeah. So I don't have any bad intentions. So please believe me on that one. But it was a great episode. I think there's a lot of good information. David, gracias, te lo juro. Like, listening to David's point of views, not only from his scientific point of view, but also his criteria is, it brings such. Look at Kevin, he's doing it.
I know.
Yeah, it definitely brings a different perspective, and having Kevin. I love Kevin. Kevin is so genuine. Like, I love how he is, like, he's genuine about, but also like he's so careful too. I love Kevin. That's my guy right there.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah, you, man. Love you too, brother. Yeah.
Guys,
You have to be good. You have to say that having a woman here within the podcast gave it not only a sentimental part, but seeing it from a woman's perspective and what could be done. And the posture was very good in Mumbai. Given that you might say it incorrectly in English, it helped us guide the podcast in a more thorough manner. We have to establish respect for the female perspective. As I previously mentioned, it's indeed very challenging to be a woman.
Yo creo que las mujeres, women wear more hats than men in many, especially in the biological aspect. Way more hats than men. So, but you guys did a terrific work, and this will be posted hopefully soon. Me and Kevin's been trying to like push all these big podcasts. But
New York City.
There's so much more beyond the walls that to explore.
I'm a beast. You know I'm a beast. Welcome to the feast. My whole team off the leash. We don't know defeat. Everybody eat. Hey, you know I'm a beast. You know I'm a beast. Welcome to the feast. My whole team off the leash. We don't know defeat. Everybody eat. Hey, you know I'm a beast.
Can I run up the score? Run up the board, breaking the mold. Ay, ay, walking the door. You know what happened? We step on the floor. Ay, ay, coming from one. You don't want partners, you already know it. Ay,
Maestro style, cosmic call. to create.
Don't